How many of you have used ChatGPT to write an email you didn't want to write? Please raise your hand. Whoa. All right. How many of you have used it to apologize to your boyfriend, girlfriend, or your spouse? Wait, nobody? Don't worry. It's between you and ChatGPT, so don't worry about it. All right, my name is, again, Amadou Daffe. I'm the CEO of a crazy company out of Ethiopia called Gebeya, Inc. We're based out of Kenya as well. We're present in 28 countries. And what we do pretty much now, we build an AI for... I'm going to talk about three things, pretty much. My delivery today would be around three things. The first thing is about everybody's talking about AI, the momentum and everything. The question we should ask ourselves, what is Africa doing around AI? Did we even participate in its evolution or revolution? Because most of the time we left behind, or we don't participate, or we don't have the voice out there to tell the world what we are doing. So the first important thing you need to know is one of the most important ingredients that power the technology that AI use is cobalt. And cobalt is actually in your beloved devices that you have right now in your pockets. It powers every device that has a chip. Most of that cobalt comes from one African country called Congo, DRC. So when people are talking about AI, the ChatGPT part, the chips actually that make it work comes from Africa, Congo. The second thing is, when you talk about AI, you need data centers, places where this AI actually runs. And you need a specific technology called GPU. It's a CPU on steroids, just to make it simple. Those GPUs, they need power, they need electricity. So the world is running out so fast of electricity, or at least power stations, that now companies like Microsoft and the rest are building nuclear power plants. In order to build nuclear power plants, you need one ingredient again called uranium. And uranium is primarily produced from two African countries, Niger, which is a country I spent 6 years of my life, and another one called Namibia. There's a gentleman there from Namibia raising his hand. So we powered the chips that runs. We gave him the ingredient. Let's see what else we can do. The other one is the ChatGPT I was talking about. The original version of that was trained out of Kenya. How many of you knew that? They were getting paid single-digit dollars, Kenyan professionals, to train ChatGPT, the first version, to make it safe for us. They're called data annotators. So the OpenAI and ChatGPT team will send them data, and they'll make sure that data is safe. So if it has nudity, sexuality, they'll flag it. If it's offensive, they flag it. To a point where when those guys were done training this language model like OpenAI, they were traumatized for life because they were seeing millions and millions of images they needed to annotate. That's what makes your ChatGPT today safe. So we produce the material to power the chips. We give power to electricity to make sure, at least the ingredient for electricity to make sure they run. We also train ChatGPT, all right? What does that mean now? How do I link it now to something a little bit more relevant to us? We always are claiming that, oh, we're going to be the youngest continent in Africa in 2030, 2050. We're going to be the largest labor force in Africa. And some of us are even making fun of Europe, because Europe is getting older, right? But then, is that really important in the age of AI? Because instead of saying a therapist to tell him that I have a problem with my wife, I talk to ChatGPT to do that, so I don't necessarily need a therapist, right? So you will have now millions of young people. I'm sure some of you already graduated college and looking for a job. I know a couple in the room. They won't be able to get jobs. Because Africa's problem is not necessarily like the Europeans and Americans saying, oh, we're going to lose our jobs to AI. We don't have the jobs. Right? How do we comprehend that there's a deficit of 9 million people that enter the job force, especially because they have knowledge degrees, right? Accountant, lawyers, pharmacists, all of these guys, right? graphic designers, computer scientists. Right? How do we handle that in the age of AI? We don't have the jobs, and now we're adding more problems because AI is there. Let's look at how the West wants to solve it. Let's look at America. Let's take America. 50% of the graduates in America can't find jobs right now because nobody will hire entry-level people. Why would you? If the entry level is internship to do a few things, ChatGPT will do it faster. ChatGPT doesn't sleep, doesn't need to take break, doesn't need to take leave. They just work. Now, ChatGPT is the smallest technology right now in AI. I'm sure some of you heard of Claude, right? Gemini, DeepSeek. It's getting crazy. Right? So these young people who used to do these smaller things and then learn from it, because really a job is where you get experience, because your degree don't mean anything until you get experience, right? Now, 50%. So America is predicting, now this is not just people on our top talking like the billionaire. These is politicians that says that it's gonna create unrest. Because here's what's happened. In America, there's this middle class. I was one of them before I moved to Ethiopia 10 years ago. You make six-figure income, you buy a house, you don't buy it actually, you mortgage it for 30 years. You get 2-car garage, so on and so on and so on. Everything is on credit. If you lose your job for 2 months, you have a mortgage you need to pay for $4,000, you got a car notes $1,500, it adds up very quickly. If it adds up very quickly, if somebody now takes your job, what are you gonna do? You can't pay your mortgage. It creates a ripple effect on the economy of the United States. They are panicking. To a point where they're talking about universal base income or universal high income. Elon Musk is talking about universal high income. The government of America is thinking about universal base income. What that means is they're going to make sure every American has at least pretty much aid, right, to survive for your food, your health care, your shelter. Forget education. But at least they want to make sure Americans eat, Americans have somewhere to stay. Otherwise, they go out on the streets. And this is not 5 years from now, this is next year. As of 2 months ago, I was looking at the news in America, 150,000 jobs were gone. These are major companies. Even Walmart is firing people. Walmart, the place where you can always get a job. Walmart. So America is panicking. Now, we get aid. Africa, most African countries live off of aid. You notice that when USAID got canceled, the ripple effect was insane. We still depend on aid for food, for education, for healthcare. If these guys cannot even fulfill their own problems in a couple of years, what are we going to do? Right? We're going to have massive unemployment, a lot of young people with a lot of energy, who at least they hope before with their degree they're going to get a job, but now they're competing against AI. That's the problem that excited me about 6 months ago. You can ask my wife, she's in the room. I can't sleep. I'm not worried about my own children. Right? I'm debating what is she going to go to college, what kind of job she's going to get. Thankfully, at least one of them said, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, thank God. You can, buying and selling will never get old, right? But what are we going to do? If this doesn't wake you up, and people use the excuse, oh, Ethiopia is little, will take a while. Be careful, all right? So what are we going to do? Well, we have a few solutions. Keep going. One of the things we need to figure out is, if America is worrying about universal basic income, can we at least shelter our people, feed them, and give them health care? Again, education is a luxury. Because the education in the future is either you want to know knowledge, which I already know, or you want to get a job. If the job doesn't exist, so forget education. Maybe you need to do sports or some of these other things you needed to do, right? But shelter, food, and healthcare. What if Africa understands what's coming and saying, can we make sure instead of universal basic income, can we make sure every young people has a place to stay? Can we make sure every young person has food at least twice a day? Can we make sure every young person is healthy? But how do we do that? Because we already getting aid. Those guys are going to cut off the aid. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? AI can help. This is the idea I want to spread today. All right? Right now, there's about 2,400 plus AI company in Africa. A lot of people don't know that. We're one of them. Even in Ethiopia alone, there's about a dozen now popping up. The first one in Ethiopia was called ICOG Labs. They're the one that actually built the first version of humanoid robots called Lucy, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah? So we have these 2,400 some companies. They have three things that we do. First one, there's data center companies in Africa that actually cares about AI. One of them is called Cassava AI. Right? They're building this data center to allow people to use it to consume AI. We partner with them. They're going to give us GPUs and so on and so forth. The second level is companies who build OpenAI or Gemini type of, we call it language models. There's quite a few in Africa that actually build these language models. Because you think that the only tools you should use is ChatGPT, OpenAI, Gemini. No, there's African tools that actually work in country. You just have to know the name of their companies. But now they're starting to pop up a little bit here and there. But then you have the third level, which is the application level, because you don't want to interact directly with a language model. What is that language model? What does that mean? It's too complex. You want an application to interact with it. When you use your Telebir app and say, you don't know how it works behind, it's like driving a car. All you look at is your dashboard. You don't want to know how the engine works. If you knew how the engine works, you probably wouldn't drive a car, right? So similarly, the application layer needs to be there. In Ethiopia alone, you have about 5 companies, Gebeya, Hasab AI, and so on and so forth. In Kenya, they're prolific. There's so many companies now coming up. So we have what it takes, and most importantly, we have the talent from the people who build these things. I have some of the best engineers on the continent to build AI, but we also have companies, CEOs like myself, who are out there trying to tackle these problems. So what do we need to do to make that happen? How do we solve housing? Some of you saw those videos of the Kung Fu robot, humanoid robots from China. People ask me, is it real? Yeah, it's real. They were really doing, you had about a dozen Kung Fu robots that were practicing or actually at least choreograph better than the human. If those guys can build Kung Fu robots, we can build robots to build houses. What does it take? You need the AI part and the physical part. It's been done already. This is not something like other thing. What if we can allow every young person to have a couple of robots to build them a house or a building and so on and so forth? That's what we're thinking about as AI company. It's not just the AI part, but it's physical AI, which is a robot. The second one is, what if every farmer, the population of Africa, the majority of people are farmers, but they don't have the right resources, money-wise, maybe not the right fertilizer, maybe not the right support to grow their crops and so on and so forth. What if we can equip them, each of them with a couple of robots to support them, to produce food for the young people that's coming up? Or those young people become farmers themselves and make it cool because they have robots to work with them, right? And the last one, who would want a 24/7 doctor at your house? Yeah, it's better than going to this hospital and wait forever. It may be scary to have a robot come talk to you and scan you, but we have 12,000, for every doctor in Ethiopia, we have 12 to 18,000 people. They're leaving the country, and some of those 18,000 probably not going to be in next, right? They live in the country because they're getting paid better somewhere else. So I mean, if you're sick, you either go to the mosque to pray or church, right? And it's not going to change because the doctors are not being paid well enough to stay. If I'm going to see 200 patients a day because there's a shortage of doctors, and imagine the psyche of that doctor. And what does doctors do? They diagnose you, they ask you what's wrong with you, they take your temperature, blah, 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 all that stuff, maybe do some sampling of your blood, and eventually they tell you this is what's wrong with you, go get medicine. ChatGPT can do that right now. It may not be able to take your blood, but you can have a physical robot to take care of you, in a sense, and monitor you, especially for children. This may be a crazy idea, but I'm sure it's going to happen soon. Right? We did it before. We leapfrog technology. I'm sure you guys heard about the story of M-Pesa. And here is Telebir, right? Remember Telebir, once we introduced it to the country, most of us don't carry cash anymore. When was Telebird introduced? 2 years ago? Right, 2 years ago, right? We used to carry cash. But now, if you carry cash, it's really because you want to tip here and there, but you don't do that anymore. It changed our society. Well, this happened 15 years ago with M-Pesa in Kenya. They're the pioneer of mobile banking. They realized we don't have money to build banks, right? We don't have enough people who can actually put money in the banks. Let's just create something called mobile money, which was called M-Pesa, using USSD. We also leapfrog. I don't know how many of you had physical phones in your house with, cable, right? Maybe the old people. But the young one never knew that there was, most of us just leapfrogged to cell phones, which allowed to leapfrog to mobile money without worrying about banking. So if we've done that with money, we can certainly do it also with AI. And because AI is so available right now, there's no excuse we should make to run with it, learn it, and create on top of it. Just consuming it, though, is not the solution, yeah? We also have to say, okay, I know now how AI works. What can I create as a value on top of it? Ethiopia can be that country that set the stage. Here's what Ethiopia has done very fast the past 2 years. I mean, let's take credits to the leaders who thought about the Renaissance Dam. Maybe they had a premonition that AI is coming, let's build the largest dam in Africa that can provide electricity. Electricity is the third or fourth, debatable, that provide the cheapest electricity in the world. That's why we have Bitcoin mining companies. You wonder why do we have Bitcoin mining? Because Bitcoin mining requires a lot of power, a lot of electricity. Guess what? AI requires 100 times more electricity than Bitcoin mining. So by being one of those pioneers, everybody in Africa, in the world is admiring the Renaissance Dam, right? We can leverage that to build the data centers, to bring the data centers in country, allow investors to come in and invest, but at the same time, build our own data centers for companies like Gebeya to build their own language model and train them there. That way, we don't have to rely on the cloud or the other companies. So we already have the ingredient. You remember that uranium thing as I was talking about? This can solve that partially for Ethiopia. The second thing, we have a very aggressive government about AI. They're very aggressive. The AI Institute, you heard of it? Ethiopia now is about, in a few months, have the first or second AI university in the world. If you ever read the Digital Agenda 2030, everything is about AI, then cybersecurity and then finance. But AI is at the core of that, right? So the government is ready. I'm sure they're looking at how can we have a robot to do certain things. The AI Institute is doing a lot of work. But we also have companies like Gebeya and others who are here to support this initiative. This is why Ethiopia is in a very critical time in history to lead and become the AI hub of Africa. I want you to let that sink in, and you live in a very important time in a country where there has the possibility to change the narrative. All right. With that, thank you very much. And